A very warm welcome to you all. My name is Jessica Langford-Frost and I'm a Policy Officer at NAUC. It is my pleasure to be chairing today's event on the quest for devolution in local governance. Firstly, I'd like to quickly run through a few housekeeping announcements, some of which are shown on screen. Do use the Q&A function throughout the event to put questions to our speakers, and the chat function to interact with your fellow delegates and to share any information or links. If you require any technical support, please do post in the chat. My NAUC colleagues will try their best to help. The closed caption feature, subtitles, can be accessed by all attendees at any time during today's event. For desktop, laptop users, to turn on closed captions, please select Show Captions. The button will be labelled CC. If the button is not visible, please select the three dots on the bottom right corner of the screen. Then, please select Captions. After that, you will be prompted to click Show Captions, so please select this option. If you are using a mobile device or tablet, please scroll across the menu on the bottom of your screen and select Captions. You will then need to click Show Captions. Once the captions are on, you can access a live transcription of the event. If you have selected the closed caption feature, please use the reactions feature by clicking the Yes button, the green emoji with a tick, to show us that the closed captions are working at your end. After today's event, we will send all of the presentation slides you'll see today, the chat, and any other useful information. And we will be inviting your feedback on today's event, so please do look out for the feedback form, which should pop up on your screens following the conclusion of the webinar. Now, NAUC would like to thank its partners, Clear Councils Insurance, CCLA, and Bless Your Illumination for their extensive support for NAUC's online events. Now, today's event will show us that despite the promising rhetoric of levelling up from the previous government, devolutionary outcomes for local councils must be more impressive. With minimal attention in the levelling up, the United Kingdom White Paper in 2022, and delays with the previous government's planned neighbourhood governance review, it appears the commitment to devolving more powers to local councils has not been fully realised. This event redefines the concept of onward devolution for local councils and questions whether any government can authentically fulfil commitments to decentralise power. Listen to insights from national stakeholders and devolution advocates at different tiers of government, exploring strategies for advanced onward devolution in the future. And reignite your passion for advocating increased devolved services in your area and receive practical advice on empowering your local council to navigate the evolving landscape effectively. So, I'm thrilled to be joined today by a brilliant panel of speakers. Councillor Desna Allen, leader of Chippenham Town Council and chair of the Strategy and Resources Committee. Councillor Philippa Williamson, devolution spokesperson for the County Councils Network and leader of Lancashire County Council. And Zoe Adams, Assistant Research and Communications Officer at the Special Interest Group of Municipal Authorities. Now, without further ado, I will hand over to Councillor Allen. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Jessica. Good morning, everyone. In my 25 years in local government, I have in turn been a Wiltshire councillor and a North Wiltshire District councillor, but I've always been a town councillor and my town is very close to my heart.
Yeah, can you see the slides?
I was just trying to share the slides for you.
Yes, we can see them now.
Next one.
Another 1 second.
Need to go into presentation mode.
So the title is The Quest for Devolution in Local Government, and it's our story. So can you go to the next one?
Yeah.
So you will see we have 24 councillors. We're a large town council. We have 8 wards and the precept is 4.2 million, gross budget of circa 5 million. So you can see that we're quite a large parish council. And we did feel in this short presentation, I'll aim to provide an overview of the process that the Town Council went through in 2019-20. And I'll talk about the assets that were transferred and the services that were transferred and the lessons that we learned along the way, and some tips for those thinking of going through this process and a possible glimpse into the future. So you can see we had freehold transfers, our Yeld Hall, formerly our Guild Hall, 15th century, which we didn't own previously. It was owned successively by principal councils. Monkton Park, which is our town centre green space, including a pitch and putt golf course, which is probably the only thing that we got that was income generating, and that brings us circa £7,000 a year. We requested the car parks in Chippenham because they have income generating potential of around 2 million a year. We included them in what we call our basket of opportunity. We're fairly sure they wouldn't be handed over to us, but nevertheless we requested them. And to not do so, in my view, may have led our astute residents to ask why not. So it was not agreed. So the services that were transferred were all the street sweeping. We had a wide range of services. They're set out in the slide. We took the view that we could become embroiled in ever-diminishing levels of service within the town, or we could take control and set our own standards of service and delivery levels. Basically, if it's in the town now, we fund it and do it with our own in-house workforce. Okay. We had a total of 24 complaints when we increased our precept, out of a population of around 40,000. So I feel that that was well done. So we took control of the service for a whole range of visible services within the town. People always came to us to complain, and they always blamed the council, which could have been any one of 3 or 2. The cost, the precept increased by 37.5% in 2019 and a further 8.9% in 2020. And we raised additional funding through the precept. Okay. 23 of the people that complained about the rise in precept accepted the explanation, the reason we did it. 1 didn't and wrote to the MP, who then wrote to our CO, who explained again to the MP the explanation, the rationale, and we heard nothing further. So the additional cost is now part of the base budget. And for the first year or so, we kept it all as a separate budget line, but it's all now subsumed into our day-to-day activity. And it's correct to say that the process can take much longer than you first think. It's really important, I believe, to get in a separate consultant who will do the legwork for you, because there's a lot of business with land transfers with who actually owned it in the first place, because actually local authorities don't always know who owns different patches of land. So it's not an exact science, and you need someone to negotiate with your principal authority, because the officers that work there with the best will in the world don't know your town very well. You involve your councillors because they're the people on the ground and they know the different little patches of land and different ownership, perhaps better than anyone else. Right, next one. So for tips, take the game to your principal council. We actually had our plan and went to Wiltshire Council. We were very low down on the list, and we decided we should be brought forward because second to Salisbury in size, and Salisbury's a city, so they were sorted first. So we went to them and told them what we would like. And I would certainly urge officers to engage councillors at an early stage and be clear about what you want. Identify your red lines and be prepared to walk away from the negotiating table. The future. Change is constant in local government, and large principal councils have many competing demands for statutory services and ever-decreasing budgets. We have currently a talk of a Heart of Wessex non-mayoral combined authority. In my opinion, and I think in my council's opinion, big is not necessarily better. I think things are better managed locally based on place rather than arbitrary population sizes. And some of us do remember the pre-1974 urban borough or rural district councils. So I hope that's given you a flavour of how we did it. And I will hand back to you, Jessica.
Thank you, Councillor Allen. And please do put any questions you'd like Councillor Allen to answer in the Q&A box. Now, over to you, Councillor Williamson.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. Thanks, Jessica, for the introduction. So just whilst the slides are being put up, there we are. I'm going to spend a few minutes talking about the role of upper tier local authorities, so county councils, unitaries, in relation to devolution, and also touch on our own experience here in Lancashire about developing a devolution deal. But first, as a reminder as to how we got to where we currently are, I've outlined a few points on some slides, and I think it might be helpful just to go through those. So if you could just touch to the next slide, please. So the previous government's approach to devolution recognised that a single county council, or indeed a large unitary council, with no neighbouring unitary authorities, could be the bedrock of devolution outside of our cities. This approach meant we moved away from endless debates about geography and the role of county and unitary councils as lead negotiators, provided a strategic voice in any dialogue with Whitehall. But this didn't mean that our partners, such as district councils, were left out of the process, far from it. All the areas worked hard to ensure their views have been heard and that they have a vital role to play in delivering devolution. And I truly believe that, whilst recognising the need to streamline the sort of negotiation process. And where proposals for a devolution deal require the formation of a new governance model, a combined county authority, we have seen county, unitary and district councils working very closely together to develop inclusive but practical governance arrangements. And this new approach by government was a response to previous failures. And I can relate to that as the history in Lancashire is one of, frankly, decades of disagreement over how devolution might work. Before 2022, only 3 county and rural areas had secured a devolution deal, despite a number of areas outside city regions bringing forward proposals in 2015 and since then. And of the deals that were announced, there have been different powers devolved to match different circumstances. And yes, there have been some common denominators in them, but they have also some notable differences according to what local leaders need to support their residents and businesses, which is absolutely crucial. So the previous government, the Conservative government, was also consistent. Their preferred form of governance was for a directly elected leader or a mayor. Adopting this approach was, and still is, as we shall see, as I go through this, key to accessing the greatest level of devolution. Just to illustrate what situation we've got in Lancashire, I'll just say a few words about that. And the key point is that the devolution deal that we put together under the Conservative government, negotiated with them, is exactly the same devolution deal that we have now gone through the same process with the new government, and which hasn't changed, which has been quite an interesting process to go through. So what we've done is brought together the county council and two small unitaries, Blackpool and Blackburn with Darwin, to form the Lancashire Combined County Authority. And the reason we did that is that we recognised that we had an opportunity to consolidate much of the joint work that we were actually already doing between us on just a collaborative basis. And we also recognised our coherent and quite unique geography and shared view of the opportunities and challenge and also the challenges that the county faces. So this first devolution deal for the Lancashire Combined County Authority focuses very much on economic growth, adult education and transport. But importantly, we've created a governance that enables all districts, business and other stakeholders to input into the work of the Combined County Authority, with the two districts sitting on the Combined County Authority itself in a non-voting capacity, along with the chair of our newly formed business board. So if we could just move to the next slide, please. So moving to the present day, the good news from our perspective is that the new government is continuing to promote devolution. They see it as fundamental to their ambitions. And since the election, we've seen mayors invited to number 10 within days of the Labour gaining power. We've seen the creation of a new Council of Nations and Regions, which is going to see English mayors sitting around the table with the Prime Minister and leaders of the devolved governments. And there is a white paper on its way, the English devolution paper, which we don't know what will be in that as yet, but we're expecting an expanded devolution framework. But I suppose there are many similarities between the two governments' approach, but there are also some very clear distinctions as well. I suppose the first one relates to geography, and to summarise Angela Rayner's quote, the government definitely sees bigger is better. But also they want to see devolution deals applied to sensible economic geographies. And that will inevitably mean upper tier local authorities coming together. And that is a change from the previous government's approach. And we also know from what we've been told is that the North will be prioritised in terms of agreeing a deal or a settlement. And districts remain outside any formal role in a deal or settlement, although the ministers recognise that there is a tension there. Can we move on to the next slide, please? I think the approach to governance and geography that we've seen over the last few years has actually helped the devolutionary process move on. We've seen a number of prospective deals announced in county and unitary areas over the last year or so. Mayoral governance is the government's preference for those seeking the deepest devolution. There's absolutely no change between the current government and the previous government's approach there. But a single county deal with mayoral governance is unacceptable to the new government, and we heard about that with the Norfolk and Suffolk proposals, and that is a change. Over and above what has already been announced about mayors, for example, as I mentioned before, the seat on the Council of Nations and Regions, we know that the framework will incentivise areas to move to mayoral governance. But what we don't know is what form that incentive will take. Government says it wants to see England with many more mayoral combined authorities. And we know that those areas with non-mayoral level 2 deals, like Lancashire, in principle, will be expected to work towards a mayoral governance at some point in the future. And there's much encouragement to move on that basis. But as I said earlier, we don't really know what the incentives for doing that might be. So if you just turn to my final slide, please. So to try and sum that up, I think we can be clear that devolution is seen as a key aspect of any drive to growth in the economy. From the CTN's perspective, devolution of powers and funding has to be at an appropriate spatial scale. And also from the CTN's perspective, that lies really with the county and unitary authorities. They have the scale, they have an economic coherence, they have already in some instances absorbed LEP functions. They've got the local and strategic relationships which that everybody is looking for, and they have the capacity. So they're ideally placed to drive local growth. Any future initiatives, such as new local growth plans, which again we're here in Lancashire we're already working on, must ensure that these are led by the upper tier authorities and be undertaken across whole county geographies. That gives weight to equal weight, which is really important to many county councils. What applies absolutely in Lancashire here, where we are 80% rural. We have to give equal weight to the needs of rural areas alongside cities and towns within those areas. So I hope that's a very quick counter as where history and where we've got to and where Lancashire is in our devolution journey, and happy to take some questions later.
Thank you, Councillor Williamson. And please do put your questions for Councillor Williamson in the Q&A box, and we will come to them after our final presentation from Zoe. Over to you, Zoe.
Thank you, Jessica, and good afternoon, everybody. So whilst I'm just waiting for the slides to come up, I just wanted to start by providing a little bit of background on SGOMA, in case you don't know who we are. So if we go to the first slide, please, Liv. Thank you. So SGOMA is the special interest group of municipal authorities, and we're a special interest group within the LGA, much like the County Councils network. We represent 48 metropolitan and unitary councils within our membership, mostly spread out across the Midlands and the North, but we do have 3 southern coastal cities as well, Plymouth, Portsmouth and Southampton. And our members are predominantly more deprived, so 44 out of 48 are in the lower half of the 2019 IMD rankings. They're typically post-industrial areas with worse health and educational outcomes and lower council tax and business rates base. So today I just want to go through the situation of devolution for SGOMA members, the opportunities and challenges that brings, and also devolution to local councils as well. So if we go to the next slide. So where are we at with devolution? We're probably further ahead than most. The vast majority of our members are now covered by a mayoral combined authority. SGOMA members are constituent authorities in the West Midlands, East Midlands, Greater Manchester, Liverpool City region, South Yorkshire, West Yorkshire, North East and Tees Valley. And of the most recently announced devolution deals a few months ago as well, 3 more members will be covered by a devolution deal. We'll have Hull in the new Hull and East Yorkshire MCA, and Blackpool and Blackburn in the Lancashire Combined County Authority. That has already been mentioned today. And then of the remaining membership that are not yet covered by a deal, 3 are in an active discussion with noted progress towards a deal. But the situation is a bit more complex for our southern coastal members, where the neighbouring local authorities vary by type, size, politics, and there are slightly more challenges there than maybe some of our northern and Midlands members had in agreeing a deal. So now that there's a noted switch by the government to devolution as principle, in many Sagoma areas, the question now isn't about the boundaries of a deal, but about the additional powers and responsibilities they might be able to take on, starting with the rollout of single settlements, which have been welcomed by those receiving them in 25-26, and then also the wider rollout to many more of our combined authorities in 2026-27. So if we can move to the next slide, please, Liv. Go through the opportunities of devolution. And because most of our areas have been ahead of the devolution curve, they have benefited from recognition of their areas and the government's agenda to devolve more powers, without the challenge of having to agree a deal with neighbouring authorities, which is a challenge that I'll come on to later. So most of our existing MCAs in our area will have a single settlement by 2026-27. And this will support long-term growth and development ambitions in our local authority areas too. The combined authorities will be better resourced to add strategic vision, support local authority innovation, and it will bring the benefit of simplification of different funding pots as well, which will provide a bit more long-term stability. There will also be now the opportunity to make the case at any time to take on new powers, which will empower the areas to address their regional issues that they're facing. And finally, because we've already got a lot of established devolution deals in our area, the Council of Nations and Leaders has provided greater representation and recognition of our regions in Westminster. But those are the benefits for areas with deals, and the map is still incomplete. So that will move on nicely to the challenges of devolution, which will be on the next slide, please. So certainly the reflections from our membership is that agreeing these deals isn't easy. For many of our members that are already in devolution deal areas, it took time to agree those deals, to get the boundaries right. And this was in areas where there was already the benefit of really close working between authorities and kind of similar politics and authority types and resident populations, and also an overlap in terms of economic and civic boundaries, which is always helpful. So we recognise the challenge of agreeing these deals at pace that is kind of the push from the current government. One of the biggest things that we've heard from all of our members, regardless of whether they're covered by a devolution deal or not, is a fear of local authorities being forgotten. There's lots of talks about mayors and combined authorities from the government, but less on local authorities. And I think that kind of impacts all levels of local government, from local authorities down to local councils as well. There's also clarity required on the roles and responsibilities of local authorities and combined authorities, especially as we see more powers devolve to combined authorities. And hopefully the devolution white paper should help to kind of set out those different roles. And then finally, a kind of key challenge is that it's really difficult to see beyond the current state of devolution, beyond the current state of local government. Financial pressures are really severe at the moment, and local authorities need the capacity and resource to support devolution, both in agreeing a deal and also supporting devolution that they may already have. So with that, I just want to touch on fixing the foundations of local government, which is in the next slide. So for devolution to work, the foundations of local government need to be addressed, and the government do recognise this. They're making the right noises. So that headline on the screen is from the local government minister a few months ago about fixing the foundations before devolution can properly happen. We ran a survey in the summer of our membership, which painted a very serious picture. So it found that 97% of respondents are less than 90% confident in meeting their budget for next year. It showed us that SEGOMA members are making a total of 1.69 billion in savings over the next 2 financial years, and that comes on top of real terms cuts to local authority budgets of 18% for England, and in SEGOMA areas that's been 23.3%. So in terms of supporting devolution, local authorities need these issues to be addressed. They need more funding and demand and cost pressures to be addressed before they can kind of fully put their all into supporting devolution in their area, whatever that stage might be. So then move on to the next slide. So I did want to just finish as well by addressing the fact that devolution is more than just these big devolution deals, and it can happen at all tiers of local government. So I wanted to touch on devolution down to local councils. And in part, devolving services to local councils can help local authorities ensure their services continue, especially in light of the financial pressures that I've just touched on. But I want to make clear that it's not about offloading services. And oftentimes transferring services and assets to local councils does not come cost negative to local authorities. Many will provide revenue and capital support to councils, local councils, when they're transferring these services or assets, and provide ongoing support after that. So I think the key aim here is to really encourage grassroots involvement and community ownership, and tap into local knowledge in the delivery of services. So it's happening in a number of different ways in SEGOMA areas. Firstly, community asset transfer, which is becoming much more common. Many councils now have a policy in place for community asset transfer, and they often give preferences to local councils within those policies in recognition of the democratic and governance structures of town and parish councils. So there's plenty of examples of different services that have been handed over to local councils through community asset transfer. For example, in Bradford, there's been a huge number of community assets transferred to local councils, which have worked to strengthen community and ensure that services are maintained, ranging from libraries, town halls, allotments, parks. Local authorities are also working with local councils to deliver local growth and regeneration. So they're collaborating with their local councils on growth, regeneration and planning. For example, in Barnsley, the development of their principal towns is being done closely with town and parish councils to capture the local knowledge that those councils have for those local areas, and ensuring that that regeneration is done in a way that is appropriate for the local area. And finally, supporting service delivery. So sometimes local councils are providing support to local authorities in keeping services running. And this is really about being in partnership with each other and supporting the delivery of local services. And just with all levels of devolution and partnership working, these aren't without their challenges. There are disagreements, things don't always go to plan, opposition arises, but all the overarching aims are the same, and it's all about delivering good for local communities and their residents. And it's been really good to see how local authorities and local councils are working together to devolve more to the local level. But we do recognise that more needs to be done at all levels to kind of make sure that all the constituent councils and authorities are heard and feel like they have an equal say in devolution. Back over to you, Jessica.
Thank you, Zoe. I will now take questions from the Q&A box for Zoe and the rest of our panel today. And please do continue putting your questions in there, and we will try and get through as many as possible. And please note you can upvote the questions you'd like our speakers to answer first by clicking on the thumbs up next to that question. So I will start with, we've had a couple of similar questions for Councillor Allen. to ask, how many did you need additional staff to take on the land and services?
Yes, thank you. You can hear me okay?
Yes, yes.
Thank you. Yeah, we actually only increased our complement of staff by 2. Wiltshire Council have contracted the grass cutting and maintenance out. And we felt that the standard offered by the contract was not great, not as good as we would do. So we literally bought the contract out, took on a couple of the staff and phased out the contract. So that it was only 2.
Thank you. It's really, really helpful. Question for Philippa, for Councillor Williamson. Do you agree that deepening devolution settlements for existing combined authorities and widening devolution to more areas must go further and be accompanied by more localism and devolution of powers and funding for all local government, including parish and town councils? And does the County Councils Network agree that all tiers of local government should be involved in devolution deals based on geography and governance model that best serves the interests and circumstances of the community concerned, and that a combined authority should not be a precondition of a devolution funding package? Appreciate that was a very long question, so if you need me to repeat any of that,
I'll try. Try and touch some on those. I think I totally agree that it's really important that any devolution deal makes sense for the geography that it covers. So if I give the Lancashire example, where in some parts of the county, probably half the county is 3-tier, we have a very active parish and town council network. So we're taking steps to make sure that the voice from those bodies are also included in the work of the combined county authority. They may not actually sit on the actual combined county authority itself, but there are a number of routes to help support the work of the combined county authority and any decisions it's made, and we want to be able to factor those in alongside lots of other stakeholders and our district councils, which take in a very considerable amount of influence on what we would do. I think it's very difficult because the government and the previous government were exactly the same. They really are looking to focus down on in terms of who ultimately that they are speaking to, and a combined county authority enables that to focus that a bit sharper than it might currently be in some areas. And I think that's okay as long as the underlying governance that you put in place enables the voices of all the relevant people that are within that credible geography to feel as if they're engaged and have some influence on the work of the combined authority. So I don't see one size fitting all in all of this. I think, and that's definitely the CCN's view.
Thank you. Now, another question for Councillor Allen. Do residents benefit from reduction in tax from the higher councils when the smaller council takes on services?
Finance no longer follows function. No, the residents didn't benefit, and some of them did. They did have concerns about double taxation, all those things. But we took a pragmatic approach, and residents appreciate that what we do is done to a very high standard. And we've had no complaints. Well, we did have to take on a tree officer because we inherited 1,000+ trees, and some of them were not in the greatest state, and that was in one park. So we did have to engage a tree officer a few months down the line.
Thank you. Now, a question potentially, but for any of you who feel able to answer this one, where does community development work sit? Surely the preventative agenda to reduce the impact on services needs to feature more prominently in discussions. Does this sit at a county level or beyond? Who would like to take that question, if you're able to?
I don't mind having a go at it. So I think the preventative agenda is a really important thing that needs to be addressed at the moment, especially given the demand on local services. I think local authorities are doing all they can to try and address this, but I think within the current climate, they're having to basically pour all of their resources into kind of late stage crisis intervention, especially in adults and children's social care. But I do know that local councils are supporting in helping with these things in terms of providing that outreach. So examples that come to mind are things like, Meals on Wheels campaigns and things like that. But I think ultimately central government does have a role to play in kind of facilitating more focus on preventative actions to have that kind of impact on preventing greater demand on services.
Thank you. Does anyone else want to add to that?
No, I would. Yeah, I can just come in. I would agree with that. I think it's important that government, sets the gets the tone right, because prevention is absolutely key to us, not only improving our services but bringing them closer to the people. And the only people who can do that are those at the front line, whether it be in a parish council, a town council, or a district council. I think county councils can support that in many ways and facilitate those conversations, not only with the other authorities, but with the third sector and other partners. Only yesterday, I and the leaders of Blackburn and Blackpool were talking with our directors of public health about how we could start really, bringing that down to a place level across the county with a number of different initiatives. So I do think it has a really important role. It is key to delivering effective services, both in terms of financially and the financial sustainability of them, but actually improving their quality, in my view.
Thank you. Another question for Councillor Allen. Could you say a little bit more about the process you use to identify priorities and the negotiation of these with your principal authority in Chippenham?
Yes, of course. We set up a working party, and as I say, we engaged a consultant who literally did the legwork for us. He established who owned various pockets of land, etc. And we had regular meetings, and our chief executive and the consultant would go to Wiltshire Council and have several meetings with their officers to thrash out a deal. And it certainly wasn't easy. It took probably the best part of 18 months to get it sorted. But it was very important to involve the councillors in the whole process.
Thank you. Thank you for that. And another question which touches on something you mentioned earlier. Why did the precept go up to cover the transfer of assets? Why didn't the principal authority transfer the funds to the town council?
Principal authority contributed nothing. If we wanted it, we literally had to buy it, if you like.
Thank you. Thank you for answering that. Question for Councillor Williamson to start with. In 2021, the Local Government Association published a local service delivery and place shaping framework to support parish and town councils framework for principal councils looking to support parish and town councils to play an increased role in local service delivery and place shaping. Have Lancashire County Council used this to inform their approach? And has the County Council's network promoted this framework to its members? That's the local service delivery and place shaping framework. Councillor Williamson?
Okay, I just got a bit of interference at the end of that question, but I wasn't quite sure.
It's just asking if Lancashire County Council have used the framework that the LGA published, and whether the CCN have promoted the framework to its members.
Yeah, The answer is yes to both of those, and we've actually locally got our own framework about how we will work with parish and town councils as well.
Thank you. A question I think might be for yourself, Councillor Allen. I think you during your presentation you said you were prepared to take risks. What level of risk were you referring to, and was this calculated to any degree?
I think taking the risk is actually making the decision to do this. That was the real risk. And I'm so pleased that it was embraced by our residents and by our councillors. So the risk was negated, really. That I think that was the real risk, that it wouldn't be as well thought of as we thought. But we represent our residents at a real local level. So we did know all the complaints came to us, and they were usually about the principal authority. So it was better to take on what we could.
Thank you. Question for Councillor Williamson again. Is there any empirical evidence supporting the combining of authorities? If so, please could you point us in the direction of the research? You're on mute, Councillor.
Yes, sorry. Oh, yeah. One of us had to do it first, and it was me. But there you go. Sorry, apologies. Yeah, there is plenty of evidence, which I'm sure we can perhaps provide as part of the feedback from this event. I don't know if we've got a mechanism for doing that, about the benefits of bringing local authorities together in the way that we, for example, are planning to do. There are economies of scale, but there are also considerable opportunities to grasp if you go down this route.
Yes, please do share anything you have, and we can send it out in the post-event mailing. Now, a question about to say the strategic view presented poses the risk that decisions are made on key services such as public transport by people who are further away from the people that they serve. The proximity of decision making is important, but what role can parish and town councils play in a combined authority framework? Councillor Williamson, I think that might be another question for yourself. You're on mute again.
Yes. So I think what is important to remember is that you are through the devolution deal, powers and funding, but most importantly powers, are coming down from government. So decisions that are currently being made at a government level will now be made at a regional or county level in our case, which of course is bringing it much closer to those who will benefit or be affected by it. So it's just important to remember that. Sometimes you forget it. So currently a lot of powers that we have to utilise as upper tier local authorities, or funding that we get, comes with it with conditions and constraints that we have to follow, which may not actually fit very well for our local geography or for some of the challenges or opportunities that we see that are in place. So that, for me, is one of the big benefits of it all. And the other aspect in forming the combined authority is to make sure that you get the governance underneath it that's helping feed the decision making of the combined authority right, so that you get the voices of all the relevant people who have an interest and a contribution to make, to be able to feed that in and be part of those discussions before any decisions are made.
Thank you. Now, we've had a question about presentations. So I just wanted to remind everyone, all presentations will be sent out after today's event. And our next question for our panel is, why shouldn't there be representation from parish and town councils and combined authorities if all other tiers of local government have seats at the table? Councillor Williamson, do you want to start on that one again?
Yeah, so what we've done in the actual combined county authority for Lancashire is small. It's made up of the leaders of Lancashire, Blackpool and Blackburn, plus the deputy leader from Lancashire. They are the 3 voting members of the combined county authority, and alongside that there are 4 other places on the thing. This is all set out in the statute. 2 district councils leaders are represented there, the chair of the business board, and 1 other place is available for a key stakeholder depending on the particular focus of the work that the authority may be developing at that point as a point in time, or making decisions on. It's likely in our initial stages that role will be undertaken by somebody who's really senior in the world of adult education or our universities, because we are having the adult education powers devolved to us. The way that the other district councils and other stakeholders, which will include representatives from local parish and town councils, is through the supporting subgroups that are subcommittees, should I say, that we have that work to generate and shape the work of the combined county authority. But there are we are constrained in terms of the numbers because of the way the legislation is laid out.
Thank you. Now I have another question. It says, what happens to the voice of people? It seems that stakeholder voices have much greater importance, and that devolution gives the benefit of being a member of a bigger stakeholder group. This does not seem like an improvement for democracy and the ability for people to hold their representatives to account. Does anyone have any thoughts on that?
Well, I think coming in from the lowest tier perspective, in our town, we have town teams, we have a community hub, they make representation. Lately I've been chairing a lot of meetings between towns within the constituency, and there's one coming up which is taking, I think, 16 parish councils in Wiltshire. We're trying to garner the opinions of the populace through that, because you can actually consult, and you literally have death by consultation. The responses are minimal, and I don't think they're representative. So we're trying another approach, and the town teams certainly seem to be very successful in garnering public opinion.
Thank you, Councillor Allen. Councillor Williamson or Zoe, do either of you want to follow up on that?
Yeah, I'll start and then Zoe. Yeah, it's a good point. I don't think it is a concern, but it's a very, very good question. The work of a combined county authority will be very transparent. All their decision making is made publicly, and to support that decision making, there is a very robust within the governance of the organisation scrutiny mechanism. So that enables clear oversight, which again is open meetings. So the clear oversight of the decision making that is being made. The point that was made by Councillor Allen about consultation is really important. Many of the decisions or the work and projects that a combined county authority will be working on will also be subject to consultation, wide public consultation. But I agree wholeheartedly with her. Sending documents out and inviting people to comment on things isn't always the best way of doing it. So certainly what we want to be able to do is have a much more engaging process to consultations on some of those big exercises, and that's what we have done so far.
Thank you. Zoe, did you want to follow up there?
Yeah, it's just to kind of agree with everything that's already been said. I think the real risk with devolution is that we have these kind of add another tier, which feels like it makes it a lot harder for people's voices to be heard, even though they may end up with more elected representatives representing them. So I think it does really come down to the ability of all bodies, local councils all the way up to combined authorities and central government, to listen to people through consultations and engagement, but also considering other ways of doing those so that the voices that can be heard and they don't get consultation fatigue, so to speak.
Thank you. Now we've got a couple more questions on finance and funding, I'm afraid. It's coming up again. Firstly, what's your view? Do you believe that there should be a decrease in that if principal councils want to take on, so it's a shame that finance doesn't follow function like it used to. Principal councils still want to take on an increase the amount they charge the taxpayer in council tax without doing as much work, without there should be a decrease in their share of council tax and an increase in the amount going to parish councils. Do you have a view on that?
Well, I suppose I could say that in previous years, probably, I think it stopped about 5 years ago, we used to get funding directly from the government that was filtered to Wiltshire Council, and then each parish or each town received some. That absolutely stopped. So we get nothing at all. So we have to raise our money through the precept. And of course, fortunately, we're in the position that we are not capped yet. So I'll leave it there.
Thank you. Councillor Williamson?
Yeah, so I mean, what I would say, just to reassure people on what the Lancashire Combined County Authority that we're forming, it doesn't have precept raising powers at all, and will not be costing the residents of Lancashire anymore in terms of council tax, and I think that's right and proper, where we can devolve from the constituent council, the principal councils, work further down to parish and town councils. I would encourage. I think it enables us to, I would say, get closer to where where residents really feel that work and see the benefit of it, and brings good value for money. There's no doubt about that. And within Lancashire, we have seen examples of that happening that we've just simply facilitated ourselves. One town council in my division that I represent actually has taken on some services from their district council very successfully, and it works much better. So that I personally would like to see that devolvement of power for going further down the chain, and you don't need you can do that by building the relationships and as we've heard from Councillor Allen, just putting a sensible proposal forward that makes sense.
Thank you. And Zoe, anything to add there?
Yeah, just to come in and say that I think it's probably a frustration that's felt at all tiers of local government that funding is no longer following function. It's kind of happening to local authorities as well, where government is asking them to do more and more, and the funding is not being provided for them to do that. And I'd also add as well, I don't think any councillor in local council, district council, county council, unitary, Met ever wants to have to put the council tax up for local taxpayers. It's never an easy decision, but oftentimes it is the only option available to them, given how tight local government funding has been squeezed. But on the positive side, there are examples within kind of local authorities supporting local councils when they do take on these assets or services. It may not happen in all cases, but I certainly know councils where they have a policy within, say, their community asset transfer policy, where that will come with funding attached to support that transfer of the asset.
Thank you. And we do have a delegate on this call who wanted to flag up that devolution does need financial support. For example, they took on an empty youth centre from the county council and on day one had a nice business rate spell. And I'm guessing from what you're saying, you would have all loved to have been able to fund that, but it's not possible at the moment due to other pressures, financial pressures. Next question for yourself, Zoe. Given 92% of the country is covered by parish and town councils, do Sogoma think that the creation of more local councils will help fill a democratic deficit in the areas covered by its members and help support more devolution to the local level?
Yeah, I certainly think that town and parish councils have a kind of important role to play. I mean, looking beyond Sogoma areas, especially in places where we've seen local government reorganisation and districts kind of cease to exist, local and councils filling in the kind of gap that was left there. So kind of most prominent example recently has been Harrogate Town Council. So I definitely think, yeah, there's a space there. But I think there are also kind of ways that local authorities are also trying to kind of fill that at a super local level within the areas where there maybe isn't a town and parish council. So an example that springs to mind kind of close to home in Barnsley is they have local area councils which are devolved a budget and kind of represented by local councillors at the kind of hyperlocal level, and I think that it does help in those situations where there aren't town and parish councils to kind of represent at that level. But yeah, town and parish councils have an important part to play in that.
Thank you. Now, a question I think for Councillor Williamson to start with. I think that the principal councils use the fact that we aren't capped to be able to devolve their services to us. What is your take on this? We aren't capped yet, but our population aren't going to stand for 30 to 80% increases in our precept to cover work that they think the unitary council should be doing.
I think it's a very reasonable question, and I've seen examples of where in a district in Lancashire where there was a significant increase in precept by a particular town council, and that huge pushback by residents about all of that. So it's a very delicate balance. They were able to do what they did because the legislative position allows them to do it, but it's a very it needs to be done with responsibility and a proper understanding of the whole context before you, to avoid residents really feeling as if they're being fleeced, frankly, and that is a real challenge. And I don't see it as I have not seen any examples where, in my experience, where the district or the county were pushing services through to local councils and in some way shortchanging them. I think there's been a very responsible approach to doing that. But I would be concerned if I saw that myself within my area.
Councillor Allen, did you want to come in based on your experience in Chippenham?
Well, I think we must have been very fortunate. As I say, the residents wanted something. They wanted their local council to have more to do, take more charge of things. So we didn't really meet resistance. It's interesting that perhaps some people feel they're being fleeced in other areas, but our residents, I don't think they did.
Great, thank you. Zoe,
can I just add to that?
Yes.
Can I just add to? I think yes. part of that is probably the way that you communicate and actually introduce those changes. I think if you do that in a sort of sensible partnership way, I think then the experience that Chippenham's residents had would be the outcome. But that's not an easy thing to achieve. I think that's the challenge.
And would you say that sorry, this is for Councillor Allen, would you say that Chippenham were, that you felt you wanted the assets and services from Chippenham? They weren't just, you know, essentially dumping them on you?
Oh, no, we went to them.
Yeah.
And I think that is part of it, that you need to be proactive as the smaller council and say what you will take on and what you won't. That's where the red line comes in. And we worked collaboratively with Wiltshire to achieve this. And I think the results have spoken for themselves.
Thank you. Zoe, did you have anything to add on that?
No, I think it's all been covered by the other panelists.
Perfect. Now, a question on devolution deals. When a devolution deal is agreed, how long does it take for that deal to take effect? And how long does it take for the new authority to make real changes? Councillor Williamson, did you want to start?
Yeah, well, I can only outline my experience. The devolution deal for Lancashire, it was started to be created in February 23, following a chance remark from the previous government minister, Michael Gove, who happened to say that he would like to see a devolution deal in Lancashire. And picking up on Councillor Allen's point, you sometimes have to take a bit of a risk and a bit of a chance to see, well, we've got an opportunity there. So that's when we started working on a proposal for government. We've now gone 12 months. The proposal was agreed by the new government in September. We're now working to get the statutory instrument in place towards the end of this month, beginning of December. The combined authority is working in shadow form now. It will, if all goes well with the statutory instrument, which we hope it will, the actual combined authority will meet formally in February, early March, and for its initial formal meeting. And the projects, we've already seen some benefit from that process. We've just taken some funding down from government in anticipation of that, which £20 million to enable us to progress 3 particular projects that we're working on, which are around economic development. Some of those, the other projects will take longer to come on. Adult education budget, although we're planning for that now, we won't take control of it for some months, but we are hoping in 12 to 18 months that we will really see the benefit of that in locally, where our colleges and universities and are really delivering courses and skills training that is really bespoke for the county, for the businesses that are here, that they're telling us that they desperately need. So really tailoring that. And so that, I think that is the real first benefits that, you know, almost at an individual family level, people will start to see. They will know, you know, husbands, wives, children, grandchildren who are benefiting from that devolved significant amount of funding, because they're able to take advantage of skills either at a very young age or while they're halfway through their careers or changing their careers, which will benefit them and enable them to take up job opportunities in the county.
So do you have anything to add on that based on your experience with Sagona councils?
I can't speak too much to kind of the exact length of time for them to take effect. And also real changes, because we deal more with the local authority level than the combined authority level. But in areas where there are well-established local authorities with combined authorities, particularly Greater Manchester, but also kind of South Yorkshire, West Yorkshire, we do definitely hear from those local authorities the benefits that those combined authorities are bringing in terms of bringing change. So it does happen, but I think with anything, sometimes these things can take time, and those kind of longer term projects to make changes do take time to kind of see the benefits of them.
Thank you. Now a question, I think, starting with yourself, Councillor Williamson. if you were asked by a member of the public to explain what a combined authority is, what would your answer be?
So I would say that it's a body that brings together councils at a local level, but it also brings together business and other interested parties to actually work together to deliver projects, to deliver initiatives, to address challenges across a very bespoke local area. So for Lancashire, it's a Lancashire footprint, which and those people are involved in it really understand their geography, they really understand their communities. So the combined county authority is addressing those opportunities, but also the challenges that they face.
Thank you. And following up from that, do residents understand who to contact about various issues in your experience?
But I think that Councillor Allen said everybody thinks the council is the council. So and I don't expect that to change. I think that's absolutely reasonable. People are focused on getting their problems and their issues fixed. So I think it's incumbent upon all of the both the combined county authority, but also the principal councils to be very clear in their communications and their signposting as to who is responsible for what. So you know, I think it's unreasonable to expect people to learn all the various different levels of local government. They just need to know where to go to get their problems sorted, and if they've got a great idea, how they can get some support to develop it.
Thank you. Does anyone else want to come in on either of those questions?
Well, I would just agree completely with that. We have a Report It app and Wiltshire has a My Wiltshire app. So people are generally clear about where they would go to get advice or support. So yes, I agree.
Thank you. So we are coming towards the end of this event now. So to end things, I'd just like each of you to tell me in 10 years' time, what would you predict devolution would look like?
You want me to start?
Yes, please.
Yes. Well, I actually would like to see perhaps Chippenham becoming a borough council, because the constraints on parish legislation for us, getting bigger, doing more, they can be quite restrictive. So I would like to see us have more powers.
Thank you. Councillor Williamson?
Yeah, I would like just talking about Lancashire, I'd like to see Lancashire perhaps on a number of future devolution deals. Whether that includes it as a mayoral combined authority or not, I wouldn't like to predict. But what I really want is for the Lancashire Combined County Authority to be working effectively and delivering for residents. But I would predict that we would probably be on our second or third devolution deal by then, which would be great. So more powers, more funding coming into the county, and I would like to be able to see that for others in a similar position right across the country.
And lastly, Zoe.
I would predict that in an ideal world, if the government is going to achieve its devolution plans, that the whole of England would be covered by a devolution deal, and that kind of map is completed in a way that makes sense geographically, not kind of mismatch. And that we would see kind of more powers flowing out of Whitehall to regional and local areas.
Thank you. I think that's a great way to end today's event. So I will say a huge thank you to our fantastic speakers, Councillor Allen, Councillor Williamson and Zoe Adams, for their valuable and insightful contributions today. Please do fill out the feedback form when it appears on your screen. Our post-event mailing will go out to all attendees, and it will include the chat and any of the presentations you saw today. I'd like to once again say a huge thank you to our partners, Clear Councils Insurance, CCLA and Blackshire Illumination. And don't forget to check out NAUC's brilliant online events programme for events into the winter. Thank you for joining today. Goodbye.